The whole world, including Denny's restaurant, is currently piling on Anthropic. Why? Jensen Huang, the CEO and founder of NVIDIA, just joined Twitter and has sparked a massive debate in the world of artificial intelligence. I'm going to be digging into what exactly has been happening because it is very multi-layered, as well as looking at why Denny's in particular have been lambasting Anthropic in one of the funniest tweets of the year, if you know all of the lore, which is deep. So let's jump in and have a look at what happened. Basically, Anthropic have stood up and said we are not going to be supporting open source or open weight artificial intelligence, whereas the rest of the artificial intelligence world has jumped in and co-signed Jensen Huang's open letter saying that they are in support of open weight artificial intelligence. A line has been drawn in the sand, and it's an important one, and one that is not making Anthropic look very good in the world of artificial intelligence. So let's jump in and have a look at the actual letter. Jensen Huang, the CEO and the founder of NVIDIA, one of the largest companies on earth and responsible for making GPUs, which are the hardware units that we use to train most of our models, he joined Twitter. That in and of itself is a big development. Most of the heads of tech companies hang around on Twitter. Jensen has been up until this point absent. So he joined a couple of days ago, and his first post was to make a big point about open weight models. So for my first post, I'm sharing a letter NVIDIA signed on why open models matter. AI will transform every industry, power every company, and be built by every country, including China. Very cool. Open models strengthen safety and cybersecurity, accelerate innovation and diffusion, and enable sovereignty. The world needs both frontier closed models, like ChatGPT, like Claude, and frontier open models. And he put out this letter, which I'll put into the newsletter. You can find that at aiwithkyle.com, which is well worth reading in full, but basically saying we need, for a healthy ecosystem, to have open weight models. He does acknowledge that there are risks, and I will talk about them in a moment, but he says that this is what we need to continue pushing this technology forward, and this is a much healthier system than having just closed source models like Anthropic. So this letter, and they keep updating it, has now been signed by pretty much everybody in the world of artificial intelligence. We have, let me scroll through them. We have OpenAI, might have heard of them. We have Meta is here somewhere. Oh, they're in alphabetical order. I should have known that. Microsoft. We have Palantir. Sure, why not? Replit, Perplexity, Vercel. So the various infrastructure companies. AMD, who are a competitor of NVIDIA. GitHub, but basically everybody has signed this apart from one very big absent company, Anthropic. Anthropic are pretty much at this point the only artificial intelligence company that has not signed this letter. They have not said we support open weight models, which should come as no surprise for anyone who's been following Anthropic and Dario Amadei's journey. They are not into open weight. They don't believe that open weight models should be available because they are dangerous. They are irresponsible to release into the world. This has kicked off in part because of so-called Chinese distillation attacks. So Kimi came out last week, Kimi K3, followed shortly after by a Quen model as well, which are very good. The gap between the Chinese AI models and the US AI models is closing very, very quickly. So the Chinese models used to be 6 to 9 months behind. That gap has now closed to 1 or 2 months. And I've talked about this extensively in other live streams before and on social media, how this is a threat to the closed source ecosystem of the American companies. Both Anthropic and OpenAI are sprinting their way towards IPOs right now, initial public offerings, going for trillion-dollar valuations, and the Chinese labs in the existence of these open weight models undercuts that whole business proposition, and the whole value prop comes crumbling down if you have very, very good models that are 80-90% as good, but for much, much, much lower cost. So it's a commercial disaster that they exist for Anthropic and for OpenAI. So Kimi was accused by Anthropic, and they do this every single time, of a distillation attack, basically setting up lots of different Claude accounts and then running queries on Fable or on Opus 5 in order to see how the model reacts. And you do this en masse. Basically, trying to replicate how it thinks by asking huge amounts of questions, getting the answers, and then reverse engineering from the answers and the questions back to how the model thinks. This is a distillation attack. Now, distillation is something that is legit, that is used in making your models better, but usually you use it internally within your own models, and you distill off a stronger model to make smaller, more efficient and capable models. However, the Chinese have been accused of doing this to American models, closed source models. So this kicked off last week. Anthropic threw out their normal accusation of a distillation attack and basically went all out against open weight models. We are expecting, and nobody will be surprised if this does happen, for Dario Amodei to go to the White House and ask for a ban on Chinese open weight models, basically cutting them out of the US ecosystem and only allowing closed source models, so OpenAI's ChatGPT and Anthropic in America. Would not be surprised if that happens. So as a result of this, people like Jensen Huang have come forward and said, hey, we actually support open weight models. We think that this is important for a healthy overall ecosystem, and it has been countersigned by pretty much everybody apart from Anthropic. So Anthropic's refusal to sign this has become a public discussion. Anthropic still, as of Monday, have not signed this. I do not expect they will. It is against their constitution. It is against their mission. So the battle lines are being drawn between closed source and open weight models. And everybody, unsurprisingly, has absolutely piled on Anthropic. For the last few months, they've already been having a lot of PR issues with botched launches, poor communication about Fable, and generally being quite antagonistic towards the rest of the industry. That has continued this week with refusing to sign this letter, and then a few Anthropic staffers also going out there and being extremely antagonistic to other people. So probably the most famous example, I think this is now at 6 million views, this is bad for Anthropic, is this guy Julian, who is a member of technical staff at Anthropic, has basically started throwing this back in the face of the people who have signed. So saying, I'm so excited that Jensen Huang is a believer in open source, looking forward to the CUDA and GPU driver open source release. Basically saying, if you love open source, if you love open weight so much, you need to open source your own software. You need to let people see your code because that's the right thing to do. And he doubled down, because people have pointed out, no, this is a false equivalence, but he doubled down and he did exactly the same to Microsoft. And Satya Nadella, coming out for open source 2, can't wait for the open sourcing of Windows and MS Office. As people have pointed out, including Andrew Ng of Deep Learning, including Andrew, who is a very mild-mannered guy, people have come out and called Julian out for a false equivalence. Andrew, in this particular case, says, this is a false equivalence. Everyone has the right to keep their code private. That's not what we're talking about here. The problem is when someone tries to stop others from open sourcing. Seeing Andrew annoyed at somebody is very surprising. He's extremely mild-mannered. So to have Andrew annoyed at you is quite an achievement, Julian Schrittweiser. So the battle lines are very much being drawn, and Anthropic are coming across as the bad guys here. Even Denny's jumped on, and this meme, for those of you who understand the lore here, this is spectacular. This is Denny's and NVIDIA in a Venn diagram is what I'm looking at. And in between, in the intersection of the Venn diagram, is knowing the importance of staying open. Now, Denny's is a diner in America that is open all the time, I think 24/7 or near enough. And NVIDIA obviously are supporting open weight models in this particular case. Why Denny's? You might see this and think, what on earth is going on? Why are Denny's jumping in this? It's because Jensen Huang used to work at Denny's. In fact, I'm going to pull up Jensen Huang's LinkedIn, which is one of the best LinkedIn experiences I've ever seen. Jensen Huang is now a multi-time billionaire, CEO and founder of NVIDIA. His experience is dishwasher, busboy, and waiter at Denny's from 1978 to 1983, followed by 33 years and 7 months as founder and CEO of NVIDIA. From 1993 onwards, one of the most valuable companies on earth. And Jensen Huang actually, they had their initial founding meetings inside of Denny's, and they would hold all of their important meetings at this local Denny's in a rough area. I forget exactly where it was. So Denny's and Jensen have always had this tight linkage. So for them to jump in with this post, absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So even Denny's are dumping on Anthropic, which is not something I thought I'd be saying anytime soon. Very quickly on open weights and open source. So some people, like Julian, actually, he says, I'm so excited that Jensen Huang is a believer in open source now. Looking forward to CUDA and GPU driver open source releases. And Satya Nadella coming out for open source too. Can't wait for the open sourcing of Windows and MS Office. So this is a smart guy. He's getting it wrong. This is not about open sourcing. In fact, if we go back to the original letter from Jensen Huang, right there at the top, open weights and American AI leadership. Open weights is not the same as open source. People make this mistake, including this guy at Anthropic. And unfortunately, his tweet has now been seen by 6 million plus people, making a category error at the top of that. So I have talked about this before. Open weights is not the same as open source. They are two different things. I will put a link back to the previous discussion of this. But very briefly, open source means that you release your code as well and all of the training data, so you can see the recipe that was used to create your model, and you basically open everything up, your training pipeline, the code that was used, so that people could recreate the whole thing if they wanted at home. Open weights is different. Open weights means that the large language model itself, the parameters and the weights can be seen. So that is what is published, not the entire training pipeline, not all of the code around. So you can't necessarily recreate it yourself, but you can look inside of the end product. A different thing that people mix up, but it is important to get that correct. But yes, even this guy at Anthropic has messed it up, and he's accusing Jensen Huang and Satya Nadella of supporting open source rather than open weights. Different thing. What is more important though is the differentiation between open weights and closed. So we have two ecosystems that are forming up. We've had them for a few years, but the battle lines are now being drawn. Open weights basically means that you are able to download a copy of the model from a website like Hugging Face, and you are able to deploy it on your local infrastructure. Now, most models you cannot put on your local laptop, you cannot put on your local computer. You still need servers. You probably need a data center for some of them. Some of them are absolutely massive, like Kimi K3. I believe you need 1.5 plus terabytes of memory to run that, so that's not going to run at home. But the fact of the matter is you can download that model. You can see what's inside of it. And if you are running an enterprise, that allows you to deploy a version on your servers, to fine-tune it and to use it within your organization fully disconnected from servers. So unlike a closed model where you're working generally via the API and you're sending information back and forward, with an open weight model you can have it completely locked off from the rest of the world, and it's much more secure for that reason. So it's a very exciting and very promising area of OpenAI. The Anthropic is saying no, we need to cut that out. We cannot have that in our market. Now, in Anthropic's defense, because I don't think they're doing this purely because they want to make money, I think they legitimately believe that open weight models are dangerous. I think there is a very legitimate safety case to be made here. Once you release an open weight model, you cannot get it back. So this is why this idea of the Americans banning open weight models doesn't really hold much weight. It's a bit like trying to ban piracy. If you ban, the download of the new Avengers movie from the Pirate Bay, it doesn't really matter because it's seeded in so many different places. It's going to be on so many different computers that there's always going to be a version, a copy of it somewhere that can be re-uploaded, that can be redistributed. It's exactly the same with open weight models. So if you release an open weight model, it's out there and it is not going anywhere from that point onwards. So you cannot put it back in the box. This in particular is what Geoffrey Hinton always warns about. So Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, or one of them, is against open weight models. So Nobel laureate Geoffrey Hinton says open sourcing bid models is like letting people buy nuclear weapons at Radio Shack. And the most important regulation is to not open source, open weight, big models. So Geoffrey Hinton is somebody who is well respected, and he is very much against open weight models for this reason. It is extremely dangerous. So if you find that there's a problem in one of your versions, you can't just roll out a patch and kind of close that security hole, or stop it from allowing people to make weapons or drugs, for example. Once it is out, it is out. So there's a very genuine reason that Anthropic has to be against these models. However, it still looks like an incredibly bad position for them to be in when every single other company in the US and beyond working in the AI sector is saying, we support this. This is part of a healthy ecosystem. Because having a local model and being able to deploy a local model, again, I've talked about this at length elsewhere, talking about GLM 5.2, talking about the Kimi K3, talking about the recent Quen, etc. The reason why you might want to do this is severalfold. So it's going to cost you less. Once you deploy a model and you've got it working for your business, you are no longer paying API pricing. That is going to become more and more vital as our tokens start to cost more of our budget. So a lot of companies are now having a token budget which is equivalent to their staffing cost, or a significant chunk of their staffing cost. That will continue as long as we are locked in an ecosystem where we are mainly paying Anthropic, mainly paying OpenAI for their API usage. That will only get worse, to use the state-of-the-art model. So local models are a really good alternative. You might not be using it on all tasks, you might not be using it on the most intelligent tasks, but you use them for your day-to-day automations, you use them for kind of regular work in the background, because they are also getting a lot better every single day. Private deployment, you are able to deploy them on your local machine. That does not necessarily mean on your laptop at home, probably not, but you can run it on a server. You can rent a server, for example, and run a model. You can also customize it, so you can fine-tune it to your particular needs. So you don't necessarily need it to be able to do everything. You need it to be able to do certain things extremely well. So we can use fine-tuning for that. And sovereignty. Sometimes models go down. Sometimes models are removed. Sometimes companies are told that they're not allowed to have that model in the market anymore, like Fable, like Mythos, for example, and it is removed from us. If we are reliant in our business on using a particular model, and it is taken away because the US government says, no, we're not allowing them to use that anymore, or that is too powerful, that is a massive hindrance to doing business using artificial intelligence. So having your own model that's fine-tuned, costing you less on a private server, the data privacy is much stronger because nothing's going back and forth to the internet, and you know that it's going to continue to work for you. There's a very strong argument to be made for open weight models from this. So you could fall on both sides, but right now Anthropic is basically the only holdout, saying no, we need to stop these things. These are dangerous. We cannot have open weight models, and their absence on Jensen Huang's letter speaks volumes. So we'll see how this develops over the week, but right now they're going to be in another PR mess, unfortunately. I do feel sorry for the PR guys and the marketing guys at Anthropic. Good God. Their life. We do have to remember, though, that everybody has an incentive here. Yes, there is the ethics and the morality of it and what you genuinely believe about how artificial intelligence should be distributed, or its dangers or its benefits. So yes, 100% that does exist, but we need to also think about the other incentives. So NVIDIA, for example, it's fantastic that they're supporting open weights. They just want a healthy ecosystem where everybody is able to deploy lots of different models. Especially with open weights, it means that businesses might be running them on servers, their own servers, which means they need to buy more GPUs, they need more compute. And instead of all of this being consolidated into 5 companies, SpaceX AI, OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta to a certain extent, etc., we have a much wider distribution, which if you are NVIDIA and you are selling hardware is a good thing. So we need to remember that the economic incentives are aligned here as well. Same for all of these cloud hosts. There's a number of different cloud companies on here. They want people using local models on the cloud. So of course they would like open weight models. There's an aligned economic incentive as well. And remember that Anthropic are probably coming from a place that they believe is true. This is not purely cynical. This is not purely, no, we want to make billions, if not trillions of dollars. They genuinely believe that these open weight models are a threat. So they are probably, rather than thinking, oh God, are we wrong here? They are, I imagine at this point, retrenching and believing that everyone else is wrong and they are right and they're the only one standing on their principle, which you may agree with depending on what side of this issue you land on. One final kind of twist on this, Karpathy. Andrei Karpathy joined Anthropic back in May, I believe, so just a couple of months ago, for what we believe to be eye-watering amounts of money. Karpathy was one of the co-creators of the original ChatGPT, very, very smart guy, and also a fantastic educator. He removed Anthropic from his Twitter bio. Now, this doesn't mean that much, but he removed it from his Twitter bio. Previously, it said, I like training large deep neural nets. MTS Anthropic, previously director of AI at Tesla, founding team at OpenAI, PhD at Stanford. It now no longer has that, and it just says, I like training large deep neural nets. So he removed all of the references to companies. Coincidence? Maybe. And he's actually come forward and said, weird misinformation to find circling on Twitter, no. So he has not quit Anthropic, according to Karpathy, but the timing of it is a little bit weird, just as Anthropic come under fire for not supporting open weights, and because Andrei Karpathy has released open weight models before. In fact, open source models, I believe, even stronger case in that favor. So timing's a bit weird. That will be a massive blow for them if they do lose him, because he is one of the kind of most beloved, but also one of the brains in the industry, who is very well liked, as well as being very technically adept. So we'll see how that works out too. I would not be that surprised if he's leaving them, which would still be a massive blow for Anthropic, considering he joined in May and it is now not even August. Could be a mess. So where are we? We are in a position where the battle lines are being drawn between closed source and open weight models, and it's happening because primarily of China. So because China's open weight models are catching up very, very quickly due to potentially distillation attacks, Claude and Anthropic are wanting to pull up the ladder and basically stop that from happening, so that every time they release a new model, the Chinese release a equivalent model a month or two later at a much, much cheaper price. You can see why Anthropic might be a bit pissed off about that. However, trying to force everybody to use closed source models, trying to shut down open weight models as a whole, is a bit of an overreaction. Instead of trying to work out how to stop these distillation attacks, how to use what is apparently the best cyber model, Mythos, how to use Mythos to prevent these things happening in the future, and therefore attack the people who are attacking you, rather than trying to shut down the whole of open weight artificial intelligence. That's where we are right now. It's going to be messy. We'll see what happens over the next week. This is the biggest news in artificial intelligence at the moment, because it is a big shift in the market, whether we go fully closed source, whether the White House, whether Trump gets involved in this and locks out Chinese models, locks out open weight models. It'd be a bit like throwing the baby away with the bathwater, but I wouldn't be that surprised if we see some kind of knee-jerk reaction like that. How does this impact companies like Hugging Face? How does this impact companies like NVIDIA? It's going to be messy. So that's why I wanted to, in this live, briefly go through what is going on, try to give you a foundation of why this is important, because it might not seem so right out of the gate, and hopefully allow you to keep up to date with what is happening. Plus, explain probably one of the best jokes of the whole year, this tweet from Denny's, which I find extremely funny, but I am a nerd. All of this will be in the newsletter, aiwithkyle.com. You can sign up for free, and I will give you a summary, the slide deck, plus more in the next issue of that. And it's going to be edited and tidied up on YouTube. You might be watching this later on YouTube anyway. By the way, everything is now being edited by an artificial intelligence. I have made another video about how I do that, because it is very, very exciting and it's saved a lot of time and money. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, aiwithkyle.com, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, aiwithkyle.com. And I will continue to build or to create these live streams every single day to help you learn how to use and apply artificial intelligence for your life and your business. Thank you.